This is only the second review that I'm uploading to my channel, and it's kind of a tough one, so y'all bear with me. Die My Love is based on a novel of the same name. This adaptation is directed by Lynn Ramsey, and it stars Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson as a couple who move out to a country home in Montana where they have a baby together. The man takes a job and is on the road frequently away from home, and we mostly stay with Jennifer Lawrence's character, Grace, as her mental health deteriorates. Lynn Ramsey is a really interesting filmmaker behind films like Ratcatcher, We Need to Talk About Kevin, You Were Never Really Here, films that are very difficult to engage with and very complex in nature that leave you thinking long after the credits roll. And with Die My Love, she's really trying to submerge you in the perspective of this character and keep you there for the entire runtime in the service of exploring some very weighty themes, including postpartum depression. But it's not exclusively about postpartum depression. I do feel that this film casts a wider net than some people are giving it credit for, because we do have some indicators that Jennifer Lawrence's character has dealt with mental health issues for a lot longer than she's been a mother. The film looks absolutely wonderful. Lynn Ramsey is reunited with Seamus McGarvey, who she worked with on We Need to Talk About Kevin, and the two of them really keep us in the perspective of this character for the entire runtime. Every single scene is captured beautifully, but something just feels off in every frame. The night scenes are noticeably bright in a way that probably would annoy me in another film, but it feels very intentional here. And the best way that I can think to describe it and the impact that it had on me is that when I get sick with the flu or with a cold, it's usually preceded by one night of near sleeplessness, and everything seems vivid and bright. I feel hyper attentive and alert, but at the same time very confused, and it's a highly unpleasant experience. And that probably sounds like a man flu coded way of me trying to understand a character who's going through something I can never fully understand. But that's just what it called to mind for me, and that's my perspective on it. Jennifer Lawrence gives an emotionally and physically exhausting performance here. It's very unflattering and ugly what she has to do, and I can imagine this performance being called unbecoming of a superstar, and a lot of agents probably would recommend against actors doing this. But I'm really glad that after playing Katniss and after playing Mystique, she's still open to taking roles as challenging as this one. She was actually pregnant during the production of this film, and the authenticity that she brings and the body language and the emotional anguish that her character is going through is undeniable. This is absolutely one of the best performances Jennifer Lawrence has turned into this point, and I really hope that she keeps putting out work like this. The other performances are solid across the board as well. Nolte and Pattinson are both phenomenal and admittedly very limited roles, but Sissy Spacek is another standout along with Lawrence. She is Grace's mother-in-law, the only one who really understands a little bit of what Grace is going through and what's driving her actions, and their scenes together were absolutely phenomenal. This film is not a horror story about motherhood. I can understand that if you saw the trailer, if you hear some of the buzz about this film, you might think that it's about how difficult it is to be a mother. But in actuality, the scenes of child and mother are some of the more tranquil scenes of the entire film. Everybody around Grace seems to think that she's going through something because she's a new mother, and they're able to pass it off on that without introspecting and realizing what role they might be playing in her mental instability. In most films, Grace would probably be classified as an unreliable narrator, which is probably an apt term here as well, but I do think this film's goal is markedly different than most films. It's not trying to uncover the facts of a situation. It's trying to get to the emotional truth at the core of this character. It's trying to put you in Grace's shoes and show you how she's processing information. Any stimuli that are brought into her bubble are brought into our bubble, how she is processing them, meaning things are very jarring that aren't necessarily jarring to other characters. There are some jump scares in here that I thought were more effective than most jump scares in horror films that I've seen this year. The film is much more interested in what's on its character's mind and what's authentic to her than what is actually the hard, factual nature of the story. And this can lead to some frustration if you're trying to organize the events chronologically and really understand and differentiate truth from fiction. There are certain moments where characters are very influential in Grace's decision making, and you don't even remember meeting these characters. There are several blink and you might miss it moments that end up being very impactful because you're noticing what she's noticing, and it can be kind of frustrating as a viewer. And that is where the film ran into some roadblocks for me, at least on first viewing. I do feel that there are some loose ends in this movie that never really coalesce into anything meaningful. LaKeith Stanfield is in the film, and I'm a massive fan of his. Anything that he's in, I want to see it. But I don't really feel that he was given anything to do in the film. There's nothing particularly interesting about his character, and although he's a wonderful performer, he isn't able to sink his teeth into much of anything while he's on screen. I can understand why this element was added to the screenplay. I do think that abstractly it does add something, but I don't think it should have made it to the final cut because I really think that it's distracting and doesn't add anything of substance to the overall experience. In the final 45 minutes of the film, it deviates from the ambiguous nature that it's upheld for the first hour or so, and I think it's mostly to the film's detriment. There are some authoritative characters who kind of diagnose what's going on with Grace, and I didn't really appreciate that. I didn't need that. It definitely made me drop out of the experience a bit, and I started to think rather than feel. And this whole film has been so primal up to this point. And when somebody comes in and tries to diagnose something, it felt a little bit out of left field, and it took me a bit out of the experience. The film concludes in a way that could have been a lot more challenging than it actually was. It doesn't lean very heavily on some of the motifs that it's put in place along the way. For example, there are multiple shots of Grace inside her home, looking out at the great beyond, kind of leaning her head against the window, longingly. And if you're really paying attention to what Lynn Ramsey's doing with the camera and what Jennifer Lawrence is doing with her performance, I think you're in tune with what's going on enough to rationalize what happens in the final moments. Sure, there would be some ambiguity, but I think that would be welcome after the film has been so open to interpretation up to that point. It almost feels like Lynn Ramsey laid the groundwork really well, but then doesn't quite trust herself or maybe the audience to put two and two together at the end. And maybe some answers were provided to satiate some viewers who need things wrapped up in a bow more than others. But there were just certain elements that I didn't appreciate. There's also without getting into spoilers, a written element that sort of describes what's going on with Jennifer Lawrence's character, and it just all felt way too clean for a film that had no desire to be cut and dry up to that point. At the end of the day, though, I do think this is another really strong film from Ramsey. I hope that a lot of the issues that I had with it clear up on a second watch, because I can definitely see this becoming a film that I absolutely love. It's a stunning and harrowing vision from Lynn Ramsey with a stellar performance from Jennifer Lawrence and stunning cinematography throughout. It's certainly not without its narrative shortcomings, but it's successful at immersing you in this point of view and keeping you there in a way that might just give you a small window into a different perspective. And hey, that's what movies are all about. And for all of those reasons, Die My Love gets a B+. Definitely check this one out if you want to see something very different from everything else in theaters at this point. When Lynn Ramsey makes a movie and has something to say, you can be pretty confident that it's going to be an expertly crafted bad time at the movies. And I'm kind of all about that. If you have seen the film, please let me know what you thought of it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the movies.